Welcome to the Future Series. I'm your host, Anthony Dan, and for those of you that are new to the podcast, we talk with real founders about building a business for the future. Whether you're scaling your business currently or starting your first side hustle, we aim to give you the nuggets of information to help you succeed in the future of work. But today we've got Jonny Staker on the podcast from Vanquish. How's it going, Jonny?
Yeah, it's great. Good to be here. Good to see you again, Anthony.
Yeah, you too. Just for the listeners, Jonny, would you be able to give us a quick overview of yourself and Vanquish and what you guys do at the moment?
Yeah, so my name's Jonny Staker. Been in business maybe 25 years now, feels like forever. Got a really early start, but we'll probably touch on that later. Vanquish Consulting Group, so primarily we help expertise-led, expertise-oriented firms, so companies like specialist agencies, consultancies, advisories, basically companies that are built on expertise versus kind of commoditized knowledge and those things that AI can consume. So, been doing that about 6 years since I sold my last company, and that's the focus for us.
Amazing. Thanks for that. And you've got Vanquish Equity Group as well, don't you?
Yeah, so that's the other side. So effectively, we roll up small companies of a similar ilk to that. So it's slightly more agnostic, but similar companies, so it's a flywheel effectively. So in some cases, we're working closely with companies who then decide they're looking for an exit and it fits our portfolio, so we buy them, roll them up, and in some cases the founders stay involved as minority stakeholders, and other times we buy outright. But effectively that's the ethos, and again, those types of companies that at this point AI can't affect dramatically.
Yeah, at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, yeah, really excited to get into this because obviously you've seen business from various different views, not just the founder-led startup, but actually a sale and acquisition, and now actually doing that sort of stuff yourself. But if we sort of flip the clock back and look at your early career, sort of leading up to your first company founding, what was that like and how did that shape you?
Yeah, well, it shaped everything. I left school very young, I left school at 15. Mum and Dad wanted me to stay in school and get a proper education and go and do, university and all the rest of it like my friends. The idea for me, I was supposed to be a professional golfer, so I was a really good golfer, and I played off something like +2 when I was 17, and by the time I was 17, I was supposed to go and play golf, and that was my dream. As always, you get distracted, so I left school to do that. Got distracted by girls and drinks and those kind of things. Kind of dropped that at that point as a career pursuit, and then went straight into kind of entrepreneurialism. Started up basically out of a cold store, a 6x6 cold store, and we would pack up DIY and hardware products and sell those. So, it's a really small thing. We grew that. We ended up in it was actually a pig shed. So it was a pig shed, and it smelled like pigs. You couldn't get the smell out of it, but that was our first warehouse, if you like. So we'd stack stuff up in there, and my wife had helped me pick the orders much later, obviously. Yeah. And we'd just do that. So basically, that was my start, and we grew that ultimately to over 100 staff. Just out of nowhere, really, and eventually sold that to a private equity firm.
Yeah.
And so it was, I was naive, really. I just didn't know what I was doing, if I'm honest. The naivety allowed me to just go for it and just do things that everybody else said, "You're mad, you can't do that." All my pals from school were just like, "Well, I don't understand that. How can you just go and do that?" So I did that, and the fast forward is sold it, and that was my foray. So I was in my late 20s by the time I sold it.
Amazing. When you started it up, then was that straight after the golf stuff? So you didn't go through, you didn't have like any career as such at the start. It was straight into entrepreneurship and getting going.
Not, yeah, not really. I mean, my son asked me, have I ever had a job? Did I ever have a proper job? And I said, well, not really. I worked in a jeans shop for a couple of months and didn't like that. And then I'm ashamed to admit that I went and worked in a pub pulling pints. So someone offered me a job doing that, and I thought that looks pretty cool. So I went and did that, but I did about an hour and realised, I can't do this. There's no way I can do this. It's just not me, So literally, I went out the back. I smoked at that time. Went out the back for a cigarette break and just got in my car and drove away and just said, "That's it. I'm never doing that again." And I think that was, there's nothing wrong with honest hard work and those kind of things. But I just thought, you know what? If this is what I've got to do for a living, I've got to figure this out. So I think that was the catalyst that said, what are you going to do? So, what are you going to do with your life, really? So yeah, so, what we're going to do, start a business. Yeah, that was basically the catalyst. Probably just the fear of not having to pull pints and do things like that.
It's interesting because it sounds like that catalyst happened sort of quite early in your life, whereas a lot of people go through different roles, different jobs, or university, or like master's degrees, or whatever it is, and never really get to that catalyst point until later down the line. But it sounds like that came to you quite early, which meant you could jump straight in.
Well, yeah, and I think that you know people have very divided views, but I think that things like that nowadays, particularly, it's more of a procrastination. It's like I don't know what to do. I'm not ready to go out into the real world, so I'm going to go and get, I'm going to go to uni, or I'm going to go do a college degree, or and they jump at things that they're not even interested in. They've no passion, no desire to actually do it. And I think it is procrastination, in many cases, because I mean, literally, I say all of my friends that went to uni, not one of them did anything close to what I've done, not one. I think the only one became a barrister, and that's as close, but nobody went into business entrepreneurialism and those kind of things. So I just think maybe it's just treading water while you're trying to figure out what you want to do when you actually get out into the real world. And so I just jumped into the real world, and I had no choice. It's like sink or swim, man.
Yeah, and I would definitely advocate for that. There's definitely a high proportion of entrepreneurs and founders that have dropped out of like a school, or I dropped out of university halfway through, um, which yeah, obviously shows that entrepreneurial or independent thinking, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
What was it like from a mindset point of view? If you can remember back then, in terms of that first setup and getting going, and that first 12 months, was it quite an exciting time? Or did you have bits of fear, or um, fear of imposter syndrome or anything like that?
Good question. Not really ever thought about it like that. I don't think there was much time for that. I think it was exciting. I loved the idea of just going out and doing my own thing and building my own thing. And, people told me it was impossible. I mean, they were like, you can't just, the kind of people I would associate with said it's impossible. You can't just go and start a business. It's not, the chances of it succeeding and doing anything are, 1% or less. But it didn't matter, because to me it was just independence. I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to pay my own salary. So it was really exciting. And I wanted world domination. I would map it all out and think, this is going to be $1 billion business. And it didn't obviously make it that far, but it was just like, the world's my oyster. So yeah, it was just the most exciting time.
And at that point as well, obviously people found businesses in different stages of life, but being an early founder, assume there's not that many overheads or responsibilities that you'd have at the time, so you can jump in both feet and dedicate yourself fully to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the other thing, isn't it? It's harder. A lot of my clients are at that point where they've got families and they've got responsibilities and big mortgages and those kind of things. So obviously it's not as easy to make those huge risks, and those huge life-changing decisions. So yeah, it's great to be untethered and to be able to just go for it and make it, lose it, try things, figure it out. And that's basically what I did. Just went for it. Some things worked, some things didn't, because a massive element to entrepreneurship is luck.
Yeah. Luck and timing.
Luck and timing, yeah.
With so you've sort of set this business up and built it up over 15, 16 years and got it to a point. Were you always looking for a buyout, or did this happen by chance or luck?
All of the above. I mean, we were approached by, funnily enough, we were approached by the same company basically to buy it several times over the years, and it was that thing of, look, we're flying. This is on the upward vertical, so there's no need to do it. I just want to keep running it and growing it. And at that time, I was just, I suppose, cocky, and I'm just going to keep growing this thing and making tons of money and all that stuff. But we hit a point where we had a bit of a blip, and all of a sudden it wasn't as easy as it had been. And it was the first sign where I thought, maybe I'm not bulletproof. Maybe, I'd seen a lot of people who hung on for too long because they treat their business like their baby. And so they become really personally attached to it, and they never want to sell it. And it's like, it's this extension of them. And I had to remind myself that actually it's not that at all. It's a vehicle that serves me. So I can't be attached to it in that sense and kind of have the blinkers on. And I'd seen people go past that point and then end up with something that went bust or became unsaleable or just became a nightmare to run. So we had that blip, and I thought, well, maybe let's put the feelers out. So we went to a company called Benchmark International, got the business valued, put it up for sale, and of course the first people that saw that we'd put it up for sale were the guys that had been chasing us. So subsidiary of one of the largest private equity firms in the world. And so they saw that, phone rang, hey, what's going on? Why don't you come and speak to us first? And I said, well, the offer was a bit insulting last time, so I'm taking it to wider market. So we ended up in the nice position where we had I wouldn't say a bidding war. Sounds, exaggerated, but we had two people who really wanted to buy it. And these guys just weren't gonna let this outfit have it. So we ended up in a really strong negotiating position, and basically, we could push the price up, and so the multiple we got was way, way higher than we should have. I mean, infinitely higher than we should have. But it was, as you just said, luck and timing, absolutely went our way.
Yeah, amazing. And what was that whole process like? Because a lot of founders, like you said, will leave it too late or won't get to that point. I imagine you learnt a huge amount going through an exit, and especially dealing with a big private equity firm as well. What did you learn, and how was that process?
Well, yeah, I mean, I learned everything that's sort of paved the way since. I learned, effectively the inside mechanics of what really is just a game. Those guys are playing a big game at that level. And that kind of inspired. We're going to talk about, my book at some point, I think, but
Yeah,
a lot of the stories are in there and, inspired that work. But yeah, I mean, effectively, these guys are, sharks. They've been doing this forever. They're old, salty dogs that, know every trick in the book. And that's how M&A is done at the highest level. And people have a mixed view about how private equity works, but that's how it works. So it was certainly a turbulent process. It took a while, I think it was, for us, it was 6-7 months of due diligence and back and forth, and we were carrying a lot of inventory. So, there were tons of upheaval in terms of stock counting and, multiple sites. And so it was stressful but interesting, and that's how I sort of cut my teeth in the negotiation stuff. And again, I was naive. I just wouldn't stand for I wouldn't stand for any crap basically. So I was just I knew I'd got this other bias that gave me the strength, I guess, of positioning, and I was able to just negotiate pretty hard. So yeah, I mean, learn everything that you could possibly learn about M&A during that experience and after.
Amazing. Once you had signed on the dotted line and your business is sold, what was your sort of mindset or emotions there? So, you know, some founders suddenly feel quite like, oh, have I made a bad decision? Like, should I have kept it, etc. How was that process?
It was really strange, actually. Yeah, it was a strange feeling because you've been so close to this thing and all the people involved in it, and we had a lot of loyal staff, and we wanted the best for them. So it was strange. I think we spent about 14 hours sat in the way the process went for us. We spent about 14 hours sat with our solicitors, our lawyers in not in London, in Leeds, and basically it was done remotely. So we were in with our lawyers in a room in Leeds, and they were with their lawyers in a room in London or Birmingham or somewhere, and the US on the line as well. So it's like this three-way thing. So we're signing stuff, and the lawyers are talking through everything, and we literally, there's a stack of paper in this contract. It's to sit through every word being read and then signing each page remotely for this thing. It's like 12, 14 hours or something ridiculous. So I was just exhausted, and then it's like, that's it, it's just done. They just say, okay, well, congratulations, you've sold your business, and you say to these guys on the other end, congratulations, you've just bought our business. So you walk out of there. I got a train back home, living in Harrogate at the time. Came back home, and that's it. Just have a bit of dinner, and you sat there, and that's it. You've got a bunch of money in the bank. You don't own your business anymore. You're unemployed. It's just really weird, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're just taking me back there in my head for the first time in years.
Yeah, it sounds like, listening to it as well, it sounds like a unique experience, but then a very much right, what's next then?
Yeah.
What was that like in terms of your process waking up the next day?
Well, it wasn't quite over, so it wasn't fully black and white for me. So although I said I'm unemployed, there was obviously a period of time where I was to be involved with them and, kind of golden handcuffs and help
Yeah.
them transition. So it was supposed to be for 2 years or 3 years. And I'd kind of prepared for that. I didn't really want to do it because I kind of considered myself at this point after working for a pub for 40 minutes that all those years before. I knew I never wanted a boss and I couldn't be told what to do. But, so basically I woke up the next day and thought, right, just got to crack on. So went in there, and so the next 6 months basically were transition running it. But these guys came in really hard and started moving people out of seats and wanting to do things their own way. So it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't the scenario of we just don't want to touch anything. So, if I buy a business, the first thing I do is leave it alone. Okay, I bought it because I like the way it runs, so let's leave it alone. These guys did the opposite. They just came in and started changing everything and turning everything upside down, upsetting people. So it was a strange experience. But I stuck that out for a period of time until I couldn't stand it anymore. And I just said, look, what do we do? And so we negotiated me getting out of there, basically. I wanted to go do my own thing. So did that, I'm kind of condensing a lot of stuff here, obviously. But
Yeah.
at this time frame, it's really condensed down. But so, yeah, went in the office one day, said, that's it, I'm gone. Left the car that they'd given me, got back home on the train, and then said, well, maybe I'll take a year out and go do something. Maybe I'll go play golf again. Maybe I'll go try and qualify for the Open again, or something like that. But I didn't do it. It was just a pipe dream. I got bored pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And thought, right, what do we do? We had a pretty hefty long-term non-compete period. So what do we do? What can we do that's a bit like this, but we can't get in trouble for it? So we started in a similar vertical. So we went into homewares and those types of products.
Yeah.
So an interesting thing about my background is, I didn't come up as a tech SaaS type bro, and then come through all this world into sales. That wasn't me at all. So often people are like, don't get it, you run these physical products companies. So my transition to a more modern type of business was gradual. So I was in physical products and ultimately found my feet in sales. I realized that everything is sales. In my first business, I realized everything is either sales or business development. The rest just follows. So what you're building, whether it's an expertise type company, a consultancy, or an agency like yours, or a physical products business, ultimately you're building a sales vehicle, and what you're selling is kind of a byproduct to that. So basically, went into physical products again, different vertical, built that up again. So did it differently, didn't want physical warehouses, so we used 3PLs. We were one of the first companies really to jump onto 3PLs, and people were like, what's a 3PL? So we wanted other people doing the shipping, picking, packing, all that stuff. So yeah, in a nutshell, we did that. We went into America quite naively, and that was my first big break into America. So we started supplying companies like Wayfair, Walmart, Target, Bed Bath & Beyond, Lowe's, Home Depot, all the big stores in the US, and built, again, a pretty significant business. So that was my, up to that point, I was the physical products guy, but it was all sales. I was just really good at speaking to the buyer at Home Depot, or, I could just break in and speak to a buyer at these, somewhere like Walmart, and sell products where other people were waiting 36 months to get reviewed. And, I could sell 25 containers to Walmart on a phone call, or so, that was my thing. So we were just pushing boxes around basically, but it was a sales machine.
At what point did the frame come into this then, and when did you write the book?
So we wrote the book last year. So what we're now, 2026, wrote it in 2025, started writing it at the start. It took us probably, 9 months to write it with a good friend of mine, Justin Michael. And so the frame came into it. I met Justin, and, Justin was very much from that sales tech background. He's very well known in that world, whereas I'd come from, the whole founder, built companies, sold companies, done tons of M&A stuff. And I met him on my journey because obviously I built a consultancy. I launched a consultancy in 2019. Met him around that time, and we just started to talk about scenarios and sales scenarios and compare notes, and it became obvious that there was something missing. There's something that he was doing and something that I was doing that you couldn't really teach. And so there's so much tactic out there, so many tactical books and coaches and information about how to go and sell, or how to go and negotiate, or those types of things, how to operate in high pressure situations, but they're all tactical. So they're all some kind of, straight line system, like, I don't know, spin selling or Sandler or those types of things. But it became obvious to us that there was something missing. So there's a layer underneath the tactics, and we coined the phrase the frame. We didn't invent it. It's been spoken about since the 70s. A German neuroscientist came up with the term. But effectively, in every conversation, in every negotiation, in every sales situation, somebody controls the frame, basically, in which everything else happens. So if you're in a sales situation, you're holding the frame, you've got the higher frame, or you've got the lower frame. Same with negotiation when you're selling. So we were able to compare notes on how I experienced that during, my war stories and battle stories of selling companies and stuff like that, and him through sales, and it kind of converged, and we said, this has got to be a book. So we wrote the book Released it in, I think, December last year. It hit number one in a few categories. It's a bestseller now. It's got tons of acclaim from, some very respectable people, and it's helped, most importantly, it's helped so many people, who were kind of, they knew something was missing.
Yeah. And did you find it helped you as well in terms of actually writing these things out and putting it down on paper?
Yeah, massively, because I think I mentioned to you when we first met, Anthony, I write mainly, people write just to be a creator or to be an influencer or to try to create some kind of output effect. I write to understand what I'm thinking. So, any post that I put out, my newsletter that goes out every week, the books that I write, I'm currently writing another one. It's to understand what I'm thinking, and so there's revelation in that. I'm sure you've seen that yourself when you write something down. You're like, oh my god, why aren't I doing that? Why aren't I taking my own advice? So yeah, I mean, I learned tons because it put everything into perspective, and I finally understood what was going on, why I was able to do these kind of things and others weren't, and how to teach it. And also, there's the whole cathartic thing of the therapy of getting all that onto paper as well. So helped me no end. I mean, I reread it. There's 10 laws in there, the 10 laws of frame. I reread it often because it's a reminder to me, to do the right thing. We all fall off the tracks.
Yeah, that's great. I haven't read it yet, but I am definitely going to be buying it and reading it as
Yeah.
soon as we finish this, for sure. With obviously the world changing a bit now, in some respects, in terms of AI coming in, shifting some working patterns. How have you found that with like the Vanquish, like the equity side and the consulting side? Has that played a part in how you're working and how you're operating?
Yeah. I think for many, it's been the best thing that ever happened. I mean, you used to have to spend all your time, traveling the world, and I used to put serious air miles in, and road miles, obviously. But yeah, I think it made the world a lot smaller and forced us to think a different way about sales. I mean, look how long the sales process used to be. Now you can speak to someone. One major factor in the frame is kind of qualifying and disqualifying, how you understand if someone's a good fit for you. And, as you know in what you do, Anthony, it's like you've got to kiss a lot of frogs before you find the right fit for you as a client. And not every client's a good fit. In fact, most are not a good fit. And the more successful you become, you know, financially in your business, the less you have to take bad deals and, bad jobs and bad work. So you kind of look at that and understand that, well, most are not going to be a fit. So if I know that from the outset, I'm looking to disqualify and find reasons not to work with somebody so that the experience for me is as good as it can be and for the client as effective as it can be. So with that in mind, to do that 10 years ago, or maybe even less than that, you'd have to get on a plane or, I've got clients all over the world, literally Australia, America, Singapore, Dubai. You have to be getting on a plane and go and meet people to figure out that I probably don't want to work with you. And so it was painfully long, and I think we're blessed now, and people don't realise how lucky they are that I can do that in 10, 15 minutes now over a Zoom. So I think that's been a major catalyst in that. And obviously, from the talent point of view, finding talent, it used to be when I ran my businesses, it was somebody had to live within a 3-5 mile radius to have to come and work with me. So that was the talent pool. Whereas
Yeah.
now it's the entire planet, so it's just mega.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how things have changed. How in terms of like these, there's obviously new AI companies and companies getting launched every day. Obviously, the barrier to entry now for launching a company or releasing a digital product, let me say, has dropped significantly. Have you seen the similar sort of thing with the physical product world? I guess everything's more connected, but has it got easier to launch a physical product business?
Well, the answer is I don't really know, in the sense I'm not in that space anymore. I mean, it's been my transition to this world, to tech, SaaS, um, digital products, kind of consultancies, expertise oriented. I've been doing that now for over 10 years, so it's been a long time since I've been involved with physical products. But I guess for those guys, the hardest part is the marketing piece, and that's the piece that I didn't like. Is that you got to spend tons of money on ads, and margins therefore are quite slim, and holding physical products and shipping physical products around the world is quite scary. I know that I had a company go bust, completely go bust, and I pretty much lost everything overnight because we had something like 600 containers stuck in the Suez Canal crisis. So,
Yeah.
I vowed never to go and do that again. I don't need to be told twice, to go and evolve. So I think those guys have a lot of challenges. Obviously, it's lucrative for those that do it right, and AI, they're fairly AI proof in that sense that it's physical products until, of course, we start printing, 3D printing everything, and we don't actually need to store and ship product anymore. That's a different story. But in terms of the work that I do now, it's been massively impactful. I think that's why I love the expertise component, because you can't, as yet, commoditize it. So I think when you and I spoke last time, I said that, if I want to go and learn how to free solo climb Big Sur in California, I can get 80% of the information needed from ChatGPT or Claude. It'll build me a plan, it'll tell me the kit that I need, it'll give me minute instruction on how to actually, climb the face. But if I'm stood at the bottom of that thing looking up, I want somebody by my side who's actually climbed it before and survived it. There's no
Yeah.
way, there's no way I'm skiing a downhill black run without somebody who's done it before, right? So I think that component, 80% of the information and the knowledge has been commoditized by AI, which is not necessarily a bad thing. People that fail are now outsourcing their thinking to AI, which is a big mistake. And so you're in this position where the authority and the expertise is the only real thing that matters. It's the only thing that's left. So the kind of firms that I work with are firms that are largely built on that. They've sold companies before, they've been at the coal face, they've been operators before, they might have, been part of, big four companies and got that 50 years of experience or whatever. So whatever that looks like, or, what you do, there's an expertise to that can't be as yet replaced by AI. So the ones that have been hit the hardest are obviously things like infomarketers and people who sell courses and programs, which to me is pretty much, that was a first mover's advantage, which kind of died 5 years ago, and people are still trying to ride that wave. But, Claude can go and build me a 3-month training program that I could sell for $5,000 probably in 3 hours. So it's commoditized, it's done with. So really it's that human knowledge and expertise. And I think that's how we not necessarily beat AI, because I don't think that's the objective. It's how we coexist and utilize it and grow our businesses in the face of all of that noise.
Yeah. Cut through the noise.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. That's really interesting. And also loved what you said at the beginning about trying to find your passion and where you were going to be in life and not just settle for pulling pints, which I think is also a big part of founding a business, understanding where you're going to be and where you're going to enjoy it rather than slogging it out in something that you don't enjoy.
Yeah, and again, I think it's a fine line as well, isn't it? Because not everybody finds a passion. So there's this advice that goes around where people say, find your passion and do that for a living, which is great. And some people very rarely actually do that. And the work itself is an absolute joy to them. But those guys are sort of a one in a million. So I always say to people, to founders, if that's what you're looking for, you might search for it your entire life and never find it. The trade-off is, if you're doing rewarding work that helps people, you might not love the day-to-day because it's work, but work provides you with the resources to go and pursue your passions. So, I've found that having hobbies and having things you like to do, I know, for example, you travel a lot, having things that you love to do that make you want to leave work early or get work done in order to go do it, that's just as good, So I often say, look, you might not love what you do day to day, but it facilitates you to do the things you love and follow your passions. So there's also that side to it. So, I mean, look, if you hate your job, then it's never going to work. But I always say, don't expect to just wake up and be absolutely in love with what you do. Be in love with the outcome.
Yeah, there's a good mindset and frame for it.
Yeah,
Indeed.
yeah.
What's the future of Vanquish look like then over the next sort of 5 or 10 years?
Good question. So it looks pretty much like it does now. We're really motivated to continue to grow the portfolio of our own companies, and I would imagine that in 10 years I would have sold that portfolio. The aim is obviously to build that to a point where there's a significant exit. That's what it's for. But who knows? I do love, having just said what I've just said, I do love what I do. I've no desire to retire and just go play golf every day. Although I do play tons of golf. But yeah, so it looks like that on that side, and then from the consulting side, we're just, we're obviously not the cheapest consultancy in the world, and so you've got to be at a certain level to be able to access the type of fees that we charge. But I want to be able to help more people. I want to be able to take our methodology to more people. So we're currently working on some wider spread training effectively. So I don't believe in courses and programs and cohorts and one-to-many, those types of things, but we're working on some training that will allow people to access the methodology and our thinking and my thinking for, earlier stage and ease of affordability. So that's what we're building out.
Well, excited to see where that goes and when that all gets released as well. Just as we're sort of rounding this off now, if someone was interested in getting in touch and also maybe buying your book as well, what's the best way to get in touch and where's your book available?
Best way to get in touch, so there's the website, which is vanquishconsulting.io. You can email me directly, johnny@vanquishconsulting.io. I'm on LinkedIn, post fairly frequently. You can jump on my newsletter, which people love, and hopefully will give you tons of insight into the industry and tactics that you can apply. The book, The Frame, Unspoken Laws of Power, Status and Influence. You can buy that all major bookstores. It's on Amazon.com, Amazon.co.uk is probably the easiest place to grab it.
Awesome. Well, look, Johnny, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been really good to chat to you and hear your journey and get some pearls of wisdom as well.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. It's been brilliant, Anthony.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much, and thank you everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.
Cheers. Thank you.